Now recognize Mr. Pappas for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our panel. Yesterday, I introduced the Burial Equity Bill for members of the Guard and Reserve. It's a bipartisan, bicameral bill. The idea came to me from our state Guard and veteran community. Yesterday, I was on the phone with the director of our state veteran cemetery, who said he has a few dozen members of the Guard and Reserve who are on a list waiting for indication of whether or not they can be buried at his facility, which is hallowed ground in our state. And he asked me, who could possibly oppose a concept like this? Well, I guess my answer to him is the VA opposes this idea. And I was really disappointed and shocked to see the language in the statement that VA submitted here today on this bill. In the last sentence, you wrote, to expand burial eligibility for reservists and National Guard would diminish the distinct honor of those veterans and service members who have earned a similar burial benefit in VA cemeteries. Diminish the distinct honor. As I said earlier, I work closely with the veteran and Guard leaders in my state in developing this legislation. And frankly, I believe that they should be able to decide which individuals are able to be buried and laid to rest in their facility and not VA. One leader in my state, Cy Mafuz in Nashua, served as an Army reservist in 1970 to 76 during a really tough time in American history. He told me he remembers being harassed by regular Army personnel for being, quote, a shake and bake soldier, and he did his best to brush off the stigma and focus on being a drill sergeant to prepare young men going overseas to serve in Vietnam. He remembers when he visited New Hampshire's Veteran Cemetery in Boscawen that he wanted to add his name to the list for permission to be buried there, but was told he didn't qualify because he didn't have enough active duty time and was not considered a veteran. He said he was crushed, embarrassed when he was told he was not a veteran. I know, in fact, that if I were called to duty, I would have given my life to defend this country. My grandfathers, like so many others, came to this country willing to die and defend its honor. He said, as a reservist, I was not told to think and act differently because I was a reservist. I was not told to do my job differently because I was a reservist. I was proud to serve and was willing to give my life if needed. But because I was not called to active duty, I am not considered a, quote, veteran. And when will the disrespect for my service stop? When can I start to feel that my time served was an important difference that I made? Another veteran who asked not to be named served 8 years in the New Hampshire National Guard, and while they were never activated, their unit did 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Many of their friends they served with in that unit were on these deployments. And they said, quote, when a citizen enlists or commissions into the military, they take the same oath to defend our Constitution regardless of their branch. One serves regardless of the potential risks to life and limb. This is the same for all branches, active or reserve. A reservist has little or no control over being deployed to active duty. In many cases, their training involves great risk, great sacrifices that are made over many years, involving careers and families with only a fraction of the benefits available to active duty personnel. So I'm wondering if you can tell me how giving burial rights to these 2 individuals would diminish the honor of other veterans who are buried in our veteran cemeteries across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. I'm going to ask Mr. Powers to respond to your question, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas, for the questions, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. We greatly appreciate everything the committee does in supporting our Veteran Cemetery Grant Program, which supports the Veteran Cemetery in New Hampshire. As you mentioned, the proposed legislation is inconsistent with our longstanding policy that grant-funded cemeteries be operated solely for interment of veterans and members of their families. That policy is found in the federal regulations, Part 39 of Chapter 38. We mean no disrespect for the service of National Guardsmen and reservists. Certainly, they take an oath. They serve their country. Lately they have, in many cases, served their state and their country as well. However, there is a distinction. The program was set up, the Veteran Cemetery Grant Program was set up to complement the national cemeteries, to be consistent between who's eligible for burial in a national cemetery and who's eligible for burial in the state cemeteries, such as the one in New Hampshire. There are distinctions, and we don't want to create those disparities.
Well, I think the statement does not do justice to the service of these individuals, and this idea was brought to me by our military and veteran community. They support this, and I think our state veteran cemeteries should have the ability without penalty of losing these valuable grants to determine if these individuals can be laid to rest in a fitting manner. I thank you for your comments, but I vehemently disagree with them, and I yield back.